Because we're going to do a little draft preview. Ready for that?
Let's do it.
So what we're going to do is we're not prospect experts, but we try to keep tabs on these things. We're going to try, and also for the sake of time, we're going to give what we think our top 3 is going to be. We're going to predict it, well, kind of what we think is going to happen. Do we want to go 3, 2, 1, or do we want to go the opposite way?
I like 3, 2, 1, but let's before we do it, for anybody who isn't following with the draft, I think anybody who watches NHL knows Shane Wright is in the list, but there's 2 other players. I think his name's Logan Cooley and Juraj Slavkovsky.
Yep.
Sorry if I didn't pronounce that properly. What's so significant about this is that Bob McKenzie's list, I think from 10 scouts, has Juraj Slavkovsky in the first overall pick, whereas Shane Wright has been there ever since they drafted recently. Yeah,
ever since for multiple years he's been the projected number 1 pick.
Yeah.
And you want to hear something funny about Bob McKenzie's pick? I heard this on another podcast. I'm pretty sure his rankings have been right, at least for the first overall pick, since 2009.
Wow.
And so it's only the perspective of 10 scouts that he then goes through and kind of deciphers through his list from, but that's a pretty good record.
Yeah, there's 2 things to say. Number 1, I think 6 scouts had Slav at number 1, and then the other one had Shane Wright at number 1. It's really close. And number 2, Bob McKenzie's list for the number 1 overall pick, and not discrediting Bob McKenzie, is one of the best reporters of all time. I've never seen a draft like this where the number 1 pick wasn't solidified. Not only wasn't solidified, it's not even who you have an 80% chance of knowing who's going to go first. The last one is, I think, Taylor versus Tyler.
Yeah.
These happen once every 5-6 years versus every time McDavid's going 1, Matthews is going 1, right? This is really, really cool to see, and I am excited to see who goes 1. It's so hard to bet against Bob, but I think Shane Wright's going to go 1. Maybe you talk about it first, and then I can go after you.
Yeah, I think if we're going to go 1, 2, 3, I do think the Habs are going to make what I honestly think is just a safer bet and pick Wright. Like we said, lots of news about Slavkovsky being potentially number 1, but Wright, he finished 8th in OHL scoring this year, 94 points in 63 games, 1.5 points a game. It's no slouch. And 8th doesn't sound crazy for a projected first overall pick, but everyone in front of him were overagers in the OHL. And that makes a huge difference in that league. And everyone above him was either 1, 2, or 3 years older than him. He had actually a really good rookie season. I was trying to find the graphic, but wasn't his rookie season points per game very similar to, if not better than, guys like McDavid, Lindros, Spezza, all those guys that got exceptional status? He was just as good, if not better than them, points per game wise.
He was 16 too.
Exactly. Yeah, he was 15-16 because he was granted exceptional status. And one big thing that's different, that's different between Wright and Slavkovsky, is that Wright lost legit an entire season because of COVID. They didn't play hockey in Canada, major junior, for the 2020-2021 season, and Slavkovsky was playing the whole time.
Yeah,
so that makes a huge difference. So maybe that's that recency bias of not seeing Wright play of that season leads to a slow start in this season. There's very valid reasons as to why maybe he didn't perform as well as people would expect, and maybe also that by default bumps up Slavkovsky. But I think Wright's gonna go 1.
Yeah, it took away his whole sophomore season, and also I think half of his rookie season as well.
Yeah, because we would have stopped playing in March. Yeah. That's right.
I agree. I think Shane Wright's going to go 1. You hit the nail on the head. Montreal cannot fail here. They can't fail, so they're going to take the safer pick, in my opinion. The last time the Canadians were the first team to draft was 1980 when they took Doug Wickenheiser. I have no clue who that is.
Terrible.
Their drafting history has not been good. This is going back down from recent to older drafts. They drafted Meliot last year and then Gould the year before that. Those guys are young, so we're not going to say those guys
too soon.
Right, too soon. Cole Caulfield, good. Kotkaniemi, failure. Yeah. I'm sorry. Poling, no clue that is, so it's a failure. Sergachev is gone.
That's a bad trade. We don't talk about that enough.
No, and then from Sergachev all the way back to 2012, literally they're all no-name players who don't play much. I don't even know if they're in the NHL anymore.
Yeah.
The whole point, they can't fail here. It's going to look really bad. This team has been really bad for a while. Looks like they've been going through a bunch of rebuilds, even though they made the cup final last year, which is weird. After failing, if they were to fail with this pick, failing with Shane Wright looks a lot better than failing with a guy that slipped into the first overall pick at the last second.
Yeah.
Just because he had an incredible Olympic campaign. And this is no hate on Slavkovsky. I'm sure he's going to be a great player. But from the perspective of an organization who is working for its shareholders, it's a lot easier to justify a failure with a guy that had been projected to go one for a long time.
PR wise, if it's maybe not the best to draft this way, but from public perception, but Kent Hughes' first draft too, as a GM.
True.
I don't think fans should ever make the decisions for the teams, but let's just say you're dead even between the two you can't pick. What am I going to get less heat for? I mean, you're human. You're going to think that way.
Very true. Montreal also needs a center, right? Right place center. They don't have that 1C. Like Nick Suzuki's a good player.
That's a good 1-2 punch if he develops, though.
100%. Half the reason they drafted Kotkaniemi is because they needed
a
high 1C, and it didn't work. Maybe they go through it again. I think my top three are pretty easy in Wright, Slavkovsky, and Cooley. I'll let you give your top three after, but look, Yaroslav Slavkovsky skyrocketed in rankings after showing out at the Olympics, but which is something of significance because he's playing against pro athletes, right?
Exactly what it is.
I think he had 7 goals in 7 games at that Olympics. Looked really good. But the problem is that before that, he wasn't looking that great. He plays in Finland's Liga, correct?
Yeah, SM Liga.
I think before that, he had 1 goal and 3 assists in 20 games.
Yeah, so he ended last season with 10 points in 31 games. But that sounds kind of crappy. Honestly, it does. But for reference, Patrick Laine in his draft year put up 6 points in 41 games in that same league, and we know how good Patrick Laine is. So I think you have to take those numbers with a grain of salt when they're playing against men, and on bigger ice in Europe too. There's less points to be had most time. So I think if you think about it from in junior, right? We just talked about Wright getting 94 points in 60 something games and that being underwhelming somehow.
Yeah,
it's the complete opposite there. A point every 3 games is actually, relatively speaking, talking about Laine and whatnot, that's pretty good.
That is very true. Just when I look at Shane Wright and his stats in junior, he can low key become a pretty elite 2-way player. Right now, offensively, he's insane. I think his offensive metrics in the O are in the 99th to 100th percentile in literally every offensive metric as expected. But defensively, he's in the 70 to 75th percentile for a lot of defensive metrics, which I won't get into for the sake of time. But when you're entering into your first year in the NHL, already being an above average defender for your draft class, maybe he's amenable to be turned into one of those elite 2-way centers.
That'll be pretty damn beneficial for them too.
Yeah,
I think that's a great point. The 2-way game, it's not as flashy. I don't think he's a flashy player, but I think he's just solid all around. And even if he ends up being your second line center, that means Suzuki 1 became very good, and it means you're deep down the middle. And then when this team's ready to go, they're gonna have a pretty good base to build around. So I think. No, it's very well said.
So I got, and I think you have as well, 1 and 2 at Wright and Slavkovsky.
Yes.
Who's your number 3? Mine's Cooley.
I'm going off the board here.
Okay, damn.
I'm going off the board, and I was persuaded by the Daily Face Off because I was reading a little bit for my draft research. I'm gonna go with a guy with honestly an incredible name, Cutter Gauthier.
That is a pretty sick name.
It's a sick name, and I think. This isn't super off the board because he's ranked anywhere between 5 to 15th, depending on whose draft analysis you're looking at. So it's not a crazy reach. It's a bit of a reach though, and I think it's because it's the Coyotes, and the Coyotes have talked a lot about we want players who are going to play here. We want players who want to be Coyotes, which is, let's be real, few and far between. But he's from Scottsdale.
True.
So getting the hometown kid, I think, would be pretty beneficial for them. You'll have a lot of. Presumably an easier time keeping him here past his ELC, and it's a guy you can build around, maybe ingrain yourself into the culture. He's going to be a college athlete, and they're going to be playing in a college stadium, so that's something maybe that they can build around, that college vibe. I don't know. He won't be playing at ASU, so I guess it doesn't really make that much sense, but either way.
He'll be playing in a college arena. Might be good for him.
Exactly. He's going to have lots of experience playing in their home arena. I think it's also something to connect with the community. They've had obviously a tough time doing that because they don't get many fans at their games, but they're moving arena now. They can start to build that and build around him as it's a bit of a poster boy. He's from there. I think that's fine. And if you pick Cooley at 3 and he decides he wants to leave after 3 to 5 years, then you really don't get his best years. But if you can get even a slightly worse player that's going to stay with you for the foreseeable future, I think you do that because you're the Coyotes. Like, be realistic. Mm-hmm. He's also not bad. I'm not just picking him because he's from Arizona. He's 28 points in 22 games in the USHL. He's 6'3". He's played on the wing, but I think he's committed to Boston College and expected to play center there. So if you can get a center that was drafted as a winger but actually becomes a center, centers are obviously a little more valuable. Maybe that's my off the board pick. I think the odds right now are like 29-1 for him to be the first overall pick. I don't know what his odds are to go in the top 3, but you can, if you're a bettor, and we're partnered with BetStamp here, that's maybe a sneaky pick to make over the next week or so as we get closer to the draft. If you can get in the top 3 sort of pick and put some money on him, you might have some value there.
Mm-hmm. I didn't want to put you on the spot here because it would be pretty scummy of me to say what are the odds on Cutter going in the top 3. So
I don't have those, but
this is we'll put the segment in here. Finding the Edge, sponsored by BetStamp, where we'll talk about bringing you the best lines to help you make the best bets that you can. Remember, 19 plus in Ontario, bet responsibly, and nothing that we say should be taken as professional advice. We're just a few boys trying to help out our community. But what I will say is that Shane Wright, Slavkovsky, and Cooley, going 1, 2, and 3 in that order, are favored right now, like minus 105. Like it's borderline plus money. I think that's a great bet, just because we know that Montreal probably is going to take Wright just because he's a center, and that's the more surefire pick. And then once Wright goes 1, Slavkovsky is definitely going 2. Cooley is probably going to go 3. But
you can find odds on him.
You gave a pretty good argument for Cutter to go number 3. Do you by chance have the odds for that?
I do. So when I said 29-1, that was odds for. I thought that was odds for the first pick. That's the odds for the third pick.
I was gonna say like Cutter to go 1 must be like 1,000,000 to 1.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I clearly am not doing my reading. But yeah, he's 29-1 on Sports Interaction to go 3rd overall. He's like the 6th favorite at that point, but
might not be a bad bet considering the contextuality with Arizona picking 3rd. I like that play.
Okay, tap some money on it if you want, please. Like Angelo just said, we're not professionals, but you never know. So that's kind of our draft wrap up. And has Wright, Slavkovsky, Cooley, probably the safer pick. I have Wright, Slavkovsky, and Cutter Gauthier going at 3. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content, and find the link to our full podcast and all our socials in the description down below.
Also, don't forget to turn on those notifications to get live updates on new videos that we release.